Welcome, and thank you for joining this session of Innovation Institute 2021. With nearly 50 sessions available through the summer, we know you'll be discovering new skills, strategies, and resources to transform the teaching and learning in your classroom, and we would love to hear from you. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to visit the Town Hall in Attendify to connect with the attendees through the activity stream or community features. If you would like a certificate of attendance for attending this session, you will find the request form linked at the end of the session description in Attendify. Thank you, and enjoy this session from one of our amazing Innovation Institute presenters.
Hi, I am Laura Steinbrink, excited to be here with you today to talk about my program, Train Like a Navy SEAL. The video might be a little jumpy, but bear with me. Train Like a Navy SEAL. I am author of the FeedSpot Top 200 in Education blog, rockintheboat.com. I am a high school English and Spanish teacher. I am the district communications coordinator, tech integration coach for the district, and the district webmaster, all for the small but mighty Plato R5 school district in Southwest Missouri. I'm going to bring you a social emotional learning program that I've developed based off of the Navy SEALs Train Like a Navy SEAL program. Well, theirs is actual Navy SEALs emotional skills training. And this will help you embed it in your classroom in a more authentic and natural way, and also get buy-in from your students because, hey, the Navy SEALs do it, and I'll show you some things that the professional athletes do as well to help your students realize this is a really good skill to have and everybody should be doing it. If you want, let me move my little picture window so that you can see the websites down at the bottom of this screen, right down there. I can point right down there at the bottom of the screen. We have the bit.do SEL-train-like-navy-seal, and you can go grab this presentation for yourself. You can also find it on my website, on my blog, rockintheboat.com/train-like-a-navy-seal, or SEL and the Big Four. So we are going to go ahead and get on in. If you want to follow me, obviously no pressure. I would love to join your PLN as well. You can catch me on Twitter. That's my professional social media account where I engage in education of all kinds. Love brain science, love following creative people and seeing how they use tools. So you can catch me there at Steinbrink Laura. Instagram is the same. Instagram and Facebook are a little more personal, not as professional, but there will always be blog posts and other exciting things I share too that my students and I are cooking up in the classroom. You can also follow my blog at rockintheboat.com. So, why do we have a need for SEL? Some of you, if you have been virtual, will really understand that we have got to figure out ways that we can help students with social emotional learning. Now more than ever, this pandemic year has been super tough for everyone. Why do we need it? Well, let's look at a little activity that my sophomore English class did a couple years ago on Jamboard. Okay, last year on Jamboard. And I'm going to move this again. We're going to play Where's Laura? So in a group, they had to come up with a story using only memes. And the meme had to tell a story. And we had to be able to come up with a theme, like other people reading it. So one group came up with this. And I'll give you a minute to look through the memes. And I have to say that's pretty accurate. And high school does summer school primarily for credit recovery, so it's not that glorious, have fun, field trip discovery kind of thing that elementary does. It's work to get credits. Here's another one. And I'm going to move me a little bit. So the guy has collapsed on the tennis court, but I moved myself. Oh, I see a spot where I can go. All right, so read this one. Because a lot of high school students are athletes in one sport or another, and they get super tired after practice. There was also one about how hungry they were, and we all know that teens get super hungry as well. And then this last one, I'll try to come over here between Patrick and the guy. Is that guy curled up on the floor? Yes, every day after school, we are so tired they just collapse on the floor. So this was a common theme, and I had several groups, but I kept getting reoccurring themes of we are so tired, school is killing us, and other things. They're busy, they have practices, they're just not getting enough sleep. We know this can be a problem. We also know that the trauma from all the school closures and disruption into the normal educational life has compounded what students normally deal with. And they deal with a lot, and we are not always aware of their particular situation. If you're working with little kids, you might be able to piece together some things, and they often tell us things. And of course, some of the things they tell us are totally not true, but a lot of them are. And high school students and middle school students may not tell you or give you any indication that they're having trouble because they are embarrassed and they don't want anyone to know that they have these issues. Maybe it's at home, maybe they're not fed, maybe they're being raised by a hoarder, maybe they have a parent in prison, maybe they have wonderful parents who are just putting a lot of pressure on them because they want to see their child succeed, go to college, get a college scholarship. Maybe it's a sports scholarship, but whatever. There's pressure and there's things under the surface with our teens that we don't see. And what I'm going to show you today are 4 ways, 4 big ideas, 4 areas where we can incorporate some SEL to help students with emotional skills, to help them be better at the workplace, better in life, and just happier human beings able to regulate themselves and to survive and to thrive. And we all want that for our children. So let's get started with the big 4. Now, when the Navy SEALs, they had reached a point where they really needed, I'm going to back up just a little bit. They really needed to have more cadets graduate from the Navy SEALs training, but they could not lower their standards because we need the Navy SEALs to be the toughest and the baddest of the bad, right? They needed to be those that can go in and get the job done under the most dire circumstances. But they weren't getting enough people graduating, and we can't lower standards. So that's when they put Navy psychologists to work, and they developed the big 4. And those are the 4 areas we're going to look at, and we're going to look at them in detail and how they can apply to the educational setting. Now let's take a look at CASEL. If you are not familiar with CASEL.org, that is the main site, the premier site, the expert site on social emotional learning with lots of resources. And they have core competencies that you can look at. This is the 3 that fit the Navy SEALs Big 4. 3 of the 5 CASEL core competencies fit these areas. So you can see that it works hand in hand with things we already have in place that you may be aware of. And if not, I've given you a great resource for you to go find. So self-awareness, identifying emotions, accurate self-perception, recognizing strengths, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. That is the site, or one of the core competencies that we are going to touch on when we look at positive self-talk and visualization And then self-management has impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, self-motivation, goal setting, and organizational skills. And of course, goal setting is one of the big four. Then we have responsible decision making, where students learn to identify problems, analyze situations, solve problems, evaluating, reflecting, and ethical responsibility. And of course, the Navy SEALs have that covered as well. So let's see. I'm going to move my little picture again here so I can get to my tools. Okay. So we're going to start off with goal setting and watching me float around. This is going to be fun. Where's Laura? Okay. Train like a Navy SEAL. Goal setting. There are several types, and the Navy SEALs, when they embed this skill and train their candidates or those in the program who haven't graduated yet but are hoping to complete the program and graduate, they train them how to goal set, and they usually use short-term goals. Obviously, the long-term goal is to graduate. So a short-term goal might be for a Navy SEAL, I can make it to breakfast, because they do a lot before breakfast. And then once they meet a goal, they set a new one. I can make it through the morning drill. I can make it to lunch. I can make it through the afternoon drill. I can make it to supper. And they keep setting those goals. And as they check off a goal mentally in their head, their brain is sending out dopamine because they've accomplished that. And that gives them the encouragement to keep going. So you got to keep setting those little goals. Now, how does that look in the classroom? Quite frankly, sometimes kids need those short-term goals as well. I can get through this class where my X is, if you have the bigs, the middle school and the high school. I can get through this hour. I can get through first hour. I can get through lunch. I can go to lunch. I can make it to my 6th hour class, and so forth. And you can teach them how to set those baby goals. A long-term goal, all students should be thinking, like if you're in kindergarten, maybe your long-term goal is I want to be a princess. Maybe a long-term goal is to be a marine biologist. Then we have survival and academic. The academic goals are what I embed a lot, and then I talk to students about the other goals so that we are clear and can set them. And survival goal can take, that can be a little tricky, but sometimes we get down to the minute, like I can get through this minute without crying. I don't have to know what the problems are for that student to help them try to set some goals and work on that. But if they need additional help, then that's not going to be something I typically would handle. That would go to your school counselor. We have a school licensed counselor who can deal with the heavy traumas. All right, so we all have, this is Amy Fast, and she is an administrator on Twitter who's got a lot of following, and she always has a lot of great things to say. So here are some goals that kind of fit in. A long-term goal could be that you focus on growth over grades. So you want to be a learner, not a finisher, as in I just got it done. I didn't care how I got it done, but it's done. We want to have a vision. So a hope and a dream are very necessary. And that goes into our goal setting. So I liked that she had. And own our culture, help others grow. That's another good goal for students. Okay, but when I'm going to talk about goal setting with my students, this is going to be the academic version. And I want them to tap into that power of self-reported grades that John Hattie talks about. And in order to do that, there's 4 steps we have to take. Before we even start a unit, maybe it's a new set of vocabulary. Maybe it's like something you're doing Monday through Friday. Maybe it's something you're doing for 2 weeks. But before you start the unit, you have students set a goal. If you're in person and you have littles, you can have them write it on paper. If you're hybrid, I have my students in high school, we create a spreadsheet, and they have the first column is the activity or unit name, and then the second column is for goals. So before we even begin, they set a goal. That's how they predict how well they will do on a test, a skill, or a standard. Then you have them chart it or write it down, because it doesn't exist if you don't write it down or chart it. And the third step is I'm going to encourage students throughout the week or the 2 weeks or the month or the unit, throughout the entire process. I'm going to encourage them to beat that score. And as a teacher, you'll be giving them a lot of formatives in between the ultimate test and the beginning. So your pre-test and your post-test in between will have a lot of formatives, right? So have students track their progress. So I usually do about 4 formatives, and I stopped having them call it, like I used to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but now I don't use days of the week. I just have them put formative 1, 2, 3, 4 on their spreadsheet, because that way it doesn't matter what day of the week it falls on. The kids just know, okay, here's my second here's my second formative. Here's my third formative, and after the fourth formative, we are going to have a test or a quiz or a mastery, see if we check for mastery. And on Thursdays, if you're doing it Monday through Friday, or whenever you hit that fourth formative, I always celebrate growth. So anybody who shows, say, a 20% increase in learning or any kind of a growth, I like to do 20%, but then I use quizzes for our word roots. So that's like vocabulary, and that gives them an accuracy rating, which they can chart. So it's fun to be able to collect the data that way. But you can do it however you want. Maybe if you're on a mastery scale of 1 to 4, maybe they start out on a 1, but they're getting a little closer and you're cheering them on. Maybe they just go from a 1 to 2, but we celebrate growth. So it's always important to recognize the growth and celebrate that growth. And then after the assessment, have the students chart that as well. Once they do that a couple times, they're going to become very expert goal setters and keeping that chart going every time they are starting new units, so that they can see how they're doing, watch their progress, and make that learning visible, and they'll start to own it. Now, obviously, there will be a few that you'll have to spot check because they don't own their learning. They don't want to have to chart it, and maybe they're always getting 100, but you can encourage them anyway. And it's always good to teach them how to set those goals. You don't want it to be so high that they can't reach and they get frustrated and quit, or so low that they don't have to try very hard. And it's after you chart that, even after the first round, the kids will get the hang of it, and they'll start understanding their strengths and weaknesses and knowing how to chart that and push themselves. You always have those top flyers that get 100%, and so they're about the only ones I allow to put 100%. And some of them are just going to get that, and you know who they are. They don't have to struggle quite as much. So that kind of goal setting is going to be a little different. If you follow that model that I just outlined for you, then you are following the self-reported grades module that John Hattie came up with for his 252 influences and effect sizes on student achievement and learning. And I saw him talk recently at the TCEA virtual conference, talk live, and he has now compiled research on 250 million students. Self-reported grades is still high up there. So that is something we can embed and work on in our classrooms, and it has an enormous effect on student learning. So think about ways you could use goal setting with your students and your content, your age level. Even kindergartners can set goals and keep them. Obviously, that would have to be modified. Maybe they're not doing it on digitally. If you're in class, if you're in person, they can do it on paper. But everybody can learn to set goals and chart their progress as they make them. So here's an example of one of my students' charts. This student happened to make it really pretty and color coordinated. Not everybody does that. And also like to put when we had a snow day. And this was not this year, but every year there's, snow days. So they have their assignment, their goal. And this was last year when I had them do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then quiz. Instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this year, though, we have switched to formative 1, 2, and 3, and 4, just like I mentioned. So here is another one from last year. This year's been the Corona crazy, so I didn't update with this year because these were really well done last year. But here's another one where they have their word roots, their goal, their first look at the unit or set of words on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And sometimes, like you can see on that first one, they had a little drop off, but they met their goal at 95. So the drop off sometimes could be, well, they got to class late, so they didn't get to finish it, or they didn't sleep well, and so they weren't paying attention. There's all kinds of factors, with teenagers. So I don't get overly stressed if they have a day or two that's off. And I probably shouldn't move that till I click. Back up in the corner we go. So here's another way you can make it look how it could look in your classroom. You can use your I can statements as your goals. Make them really worthwhile for students, and you can put a bulletin board up, especially lower elementary or upper elementary. You can have our goals, have your I can statements. If they're on dry erase, you can erase and put them back up each day. You can use a chalkboard for this or a whiteboard and just section it off and go do it that way. You can also take sticky notes and have kids do goal setter wall. And they set a goal, and this could be the personal goal. It could be those survival or academic, or it could be any kind. It could be long-term. It could be short-term, and you could have goal getters. Could be maybe like you want to have them goal set with in January when we start a new semester and a new year, and teach them all about those New Year's resolutions. So this is our goals for the new school year resolution. You can kind of tie in some culture, and that's fun. But I do encourage you to make use of those I can statements. Let those students see the targets they have to hit and set those goals and chart it as best you can, because some things are harder to chart than others. Now, if I want to do a long-term goal or a short-term goal, here are some of the goal settings tips that I have. So long-term goal might be students setting a 3 to 5 year in the future, college or whatever. But if you're little, they could think, what might I be doing in 3 to 5 years? Oh, well, I'll be in middle school, or oh, I'll be in 5th grade, or whatever it is. And what do they think they'll be doing and learning? And then number 2, the next thing is have them record those steps. What would it take to get there? If I'm going to be in the 5th grade in 3 years, what do I have to do and know in order to get there and be successful? Same thing with in middle school or high school or college or career. What is it going to take for me to be successful? And have kids look that up. That could be some research. Some of it might be general knowledge. Could be an interview with someone. But it's great to have them start thinking in the future. Step 3, come up with smaller short-term goals that they have to achieve, like at school, in order to get to that long-term and to finish the year successfully. And then 4, students are setting weekly goals. So what do I need to do this week? What will it take to achieve them? And number 4 is key. If you have high anxiety students that have anxiety attacks or suffer and have to constantly battle their anxiety, goal setting can look like for them a task list. Some students love to have a checklist or a task list, and it helps them focus. And brain research from and I believe I linked it at the end, Psychology Today online had an article about setting your not necessarily goal setting, but tasks and checklist, a task list and a checklist. And what it stated was that if you make a list of things you have to get done and then you check them off as you get them done, that releases the dopamine to make you feel good. So your brain's like sending out that chemical burst of dopamine, and you're like, oh, it feels good. And it calms you down. So if you've got high anxiety, I take my student that I can see is struggling and I'll say, hey, what's going on? And a lot of times they're worried about all the work that's piling up. So have them write it out. I want you, and it's great practice to have your whole class do that. All right, everybody, it's Thursday. Let's write out what we have to do by Friday. Or what do we have to do this week on Monday? Or maybe Wednesday. What do we have to do? Let's make a list of everything we have to do in all of our classes. Let's write it out. They make a checklist. So I have to work on chemistry. I have to do English 3. I have to do art. I have to do this. And they're specific, so they know the tasks they have to do. And then have them check them off as they go throughout the week. And then if they fail to make a goal, because sometimes that happens, the research shows that our brain will be satisfied if we make a plan to make that goal. So I failed it today, but I'm going to make a plan to work on it tomorrow at 3. Just doing that extra step also releases dopamine, and our brain is like, now we're back in business. I can regulate and calm down. So those are some easy things you can do. Teach your kids how to make a checklist. This is what I've got to do this period. Let's get that done. We teachers like to make those lists for our students and have them on the board, but it's much better for them if we make it where they have the access and they check that off. So if I'm going to look at a survival goal for a kid, I'm looking at this kid in my room, and if you know that the trauma-informed practice where you have the brain functioning, this is the normal, healthy brain, but then as there's stressors, it starts to uncover from the amygdala so that it's all flappy, like a flappy hand, and we don't want hands to get to flappy because that's bad. we want that brain to be all nice and tight, right? So how do we keep them that way? Well, we can't take all the trauma out of their lives, obviously, but the Navy SEALs worked on survival goals, and they had to train that way. Students can too. What does that student need to get through the class right now? Do they need to take a walk? Sometimes a fake errand to the secretary? I like to use rainbow walks where the student has to know. I don't always know. Elementary teachers, you guys are amazing. You know this. I don't always know the colors of the rainbow in order. They have to take a walk. Say they're walking up the hall. Maybe there's a water fountain at the far end of the hall. Walk up the hall. And as you go, you're going to start looking for colors of the rainbow in order. And I want you, and you can even make them write it down, or you can just have them memorize what the object is they see that's color. So what's going to be red? Well, I see that on the bulletin board over there, that picture that has red on it. So they have to be able to tell you when they get back what was, and name the colors. What was red? What was orange? What was this? I don't always ask them, but I tell them before they leave, hey, in fact, most of the time I don't ask them, but I tell them, I want you to walk up the hall. Just take a quick walk. You're going to do a rainbow walk. And on the way up and on the way down, you're going to look for things. But on the way up, you're going to look for colors of the rainbow in order. And you're going to need to tell me what those objects are if I ask. On the way back, you're going to do it in reverse order. So the last color in the rainbow, we're going to look for that. And it can't be the same thing twice. But that helps their brain focus, and it drives out the anxiety so that they can have that singular focus they need to quiet the rest of their brain. And it does wonders. Plus movement. We all know the value of movement, right? Now, what does the student need to get through the next class? And for elementary students, it might just be the next transition. What about the bus ride? Lunch. Lunch is horrendous for kids back in the day, pre-COVID, when we have them all in the cafeteria. That can be so intimidating. and trauma triggering. It can be very tough. What about the bus ride? What about tonight's game? What about getting home? What about after dark? What does that student need? So we have to think about those and help them learn to set those short steps. So you tell yourself, I can make it home on the bus. I can enjoy the game. I can walk down the hall to my next class. How can I get through this day? How many goals do I need to set? They can write them down and check them off. They don't have to, but they can. They're going to get that release of dopamine every time they make that goal. Okay, now the next one is look at how you could chart some of those long-term goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. You could break it down and have them charted. I sometimes just have them create a visual, goal-setting visual, not necessarily like this, but you could. But I like to make them a little bit fancier. I don't know if I put the example of one I made recently in here. Maybe not. All right, so we're going back up. All right, this is visualization. This one might be a little tougher to get going in the academic world, but sports, professional sports, and the Navy SEALs and other high flying, top of their game people have this going in spades. So the Navy SEALs psychologist said that if you just think about yourself doing the activity and you visualize yourself doing it, not watching yourself doing it from afar, but you visualize yourself doing it, then that creates those neural pathways as if you actually did the activity. That's called muscle memory, but you didn't have to move a muscle. You just thought it. And that's pretty powerful. There was a kicker for the Dallas Cowboys many moons ago. When I lived in Texas, actually, I saw that story for the first time come out in a newspaper, and he was doing this technique. They didn't call it visualization. But before every game, he would be out on the field because I think the teams warm up in professional football roughly 2 hours before the game. They're out there doing stretches and drills to get warmed up. And as the kicker, he didn't usually do all of the things with the team. He did his own routine, and then he would go stand on the field at every spot where he thought he might have to kick a field goal. And he would stand there and close his eyes, and he would visualize the entire kick from the count to the snap to the placing of the ball and his approach each step, his foot connecting to the ball, and then watching it go through the uprights. And he did that at every step. And he was, and I think still the most accurate kicker in Cowboy history. And I want to say he's third all time in the NFL or in the top 5. He might be in the top 5. I haven't checked since Corona, but he was in the top 5 NFL all-time most accurate kickers. So LeBron James does this as well. If he's watching, because basketball players and professional athletes, football players, they watch game film of all of their opponents that they're personally going to have to face and that they face as a team. So he will watch game film if he knows he's going to have to play a certain team or player. He knows he's going to go up against them, watches their moves, and then he starts to visualize, okay, if I do this, he's going to do this, and then I need to do this. And he visualizes, sits and closes his eyes and thinks about it, how that's going to look. And then when it comes time to play the game and that scenario starts to play out, he already knows what to do. Doesn't have to think about it. Muscle memory kicks in. Those neural pathways have already been there. So if you can think about ways to use that in your classroom, maybe have kids mentally rehearse when they're about to take a big test. Have them try that on your smaller tests first before you get to those big tests. Build that muscle memory. Maybe bring in a rain stick and call it sit, eyes closed, and listen. And when the rain stick ends, then they can open their eyes and then we can get at the activity. So have them visualize things first, visualize being successful, and visualize them failing and what they will do after the fail. Have them visualize it, because sometimes it's more important to know what to do if something goes wrong than just to think about how well we're going to do on the test. So if I face this kind of problem, how will I handle it? If I get asked this kind of question, how will I handle it? Think of some ways that will apply in your classroom and then try out the technique of visualization. You can also call it, maybe do like a vision board. So I know that how to do this math problem is this, and this math problem is this, and this math problem is this. And I know these formulas, but here's where I get stuck. Let me put a picture here. So if this happens on the test, I'm going to do this. Just some ideas on how you can make that work for you, but it's very powerful. In the Navy SEALs training, they would sit and visualize how they would get out of the pool drill, which is one of the most intimidating ones that they have. You are thrown into a pool of water without any scuba gear, and you are zip tied. Your hands are behind your back. And you have to go down to the bottom. You have to get out of the zip ties, and you have to get on your gear, put it on, and get to the surface, and within a time frame, because they're timing it. And you only get, I want to say, 3 attempts, and then you're out of the program entirely if you can't pass this one exercise in 3 attempts. But wait, there's more, because a Navy SEAL wouldn't just get to float down there in their zip-tied condition and put on their breathing apparatus and get that equipment back on. No, they have trainers in the pool with them who are constantly pulling the mouthpiece out or sliding it off their shoulder or disrupting them so that they can't just do it. They have to fight off an attacker kind of situation in order to get it on there. And one of the reasons they do that is because the biggest fear most people face is drowning. And it's a hard one to overcome. So if they can teach their cadets how to overcome that fear, and not, when I say overcome, you're still going to be afraid, but you're going to work through that fear and be able to function anyway and not get paralyzed by it, and your brain be able to think through it and still make the right steps and do the right training things. So I'm always curious on ways I can apply that in the classroom because it's such a powerful thing, building that muscle memory without using your muscles. So I created a little graphic. Now, I did not come up with SEAL. That was a former Navy SEAL who came up with it because he said anytime he can use that acronym, he will, but he has his professional athletes and other people who hire him use that. He teaches them that so they can take a minute and think through things in a quiet way where they can just focus and help build that muscle memory. And I liked it, and I thought that would be appealing. SEAL. All right, here's another one that has a lot of power, and I think I'm going to leave me up there. I'm going to make sure I'm not. Okay, perfect. All right, I can be right there in the middle or in the corner. So reflective review is a way you can practice some of this in the classroom, and it's going to tap into that brain dump kind of scenario that retrieval practice, brain science can bring. So first and it's great for the end of a lesson, right? So like an exit ticket, be perfect for that. And it's critical thinking, so you're going to look good on those scores and kids are going to learn how to think critically. So let's sit here and conjugate the verb ser in the yo form. So start basic. So the first thing is kids have to conjugate that verb. I'm using Spanish as an example because that's what I teach. We can help brainstorm if you're live with me some ways. You can use this. But think of what you want them to do on a very basic level. So what's the basic thing they have to do? Conjugate a verb, because you can't use it in a sentence if you can't conjugate the verb to fit the subject. So that's where my starting point is. So then the next step is have them use it in a sentence. And then the final step is have them say it to a classmate so they can see and hear themselves do it. And you could have them think about all of that before you do it. That might be one way to incorporate the seal. Sit eyes closed and listen, and then start the reflective review. So, can you do a basic step on your own? Can you do an advanced step on your own? Now, can you go share it with a classmate? And that's kind of like, I think, pair share activity, but we're going to think, and then share. So that is what I call reflective review. And again, it's me smashing together some different brain science activities and creating my own reflective review. Okay, now I tried to think of ways this might look, how it might look in elementary for visualization. I don't know why I'm struggling with that word. You'll just have to bear with me. In the elementary, what do we do when we face the worst outcomes? What would we do if blank happens? So if you're working on a skill, you can lead this whole group or a small group. If we're trying to tie our shoe, what do we do if this happens? And have the kids brainstorm. But then what would we do next? And have them think about it, envision it, think it, see it in their brain, create that muscle memory. Tying shoes, maybe if reading, what do we do if we don't know how to say a word? What if we're reading in class and this happens? What about taking a test, making friends, navigating that scary recess sometimes? What do we do? And you could even do that not necessarily just academically, but what do we do at recess if our friend doesn't ask us to come play with them? You could do another social emotional lesson like that. Okay, and in the middle school and the high school, it's going to look similar. They're going to have to think through an event or a scenario before the event happens, and then they need to imagine it going perfectly, and then also imagine it again where there's problems. And some of the things that they might think about, this is middle school and high school. So obviously your middle school is not going to take the ACT or the ASVAB, but high school students do. But they do have performance events. They take tests. They have to make friends. They have to go to lunch and navigate that crowd. There's colleges and jobs to think of and interviews, maybe even at McDonald's. They have to settle disputes with friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, all those fun things. And you could just pick one and occasionally, or pick a fun one or a non-threatening one to teach them in the classroom how to do that activity. And then they can use that skill on their own. They don't always have to have you do it in the classroom, but you would want to practice that for academics. But the rest of it they could do on their own once you show them how. This one is absolutely my favorite, but it also could be the toughest one for us to stay on top of. Positive self-talk. That Little Engine Who Could. The Little Engine Who Could, or Little Engine Who Could, was one of my favorite books growing up. And if you haven't read it, or you haven't read it recently, you can Google it. I suggest buying the book. Read it to your class. Because you know what? If that little engine had told himself all the way up the hill, I think I can't, or I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, then he would not have gotten up that hill. He would not have been successful. But instead, he told himself the whole time, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Okay, sure. If you're teaching high school, you're thinking, this is for little kids. No, Navy SEALs focus on the power of positive self-talk. They are taught how to do it. Because if your life and the life of your, what do they call them in the SEALs, but the life of your team depend on you, then you need to know that you've been trained. You need to be confident in that training and know that you can get through this situation regardless of what it is. Keep yourself calm. Tell yourself you can do it. You've been trained to do this. You can get the job done. And then you go about doing it. So they have life or death situations to worry about. And our students, not as much. Some of them might face a life or death situation here and there, but a Navy SEAL trains to face that on a regular basis. So they tell themselves, I can do this, I can, I can, I can. And again, here we have those I can statements you can use for the power of good. I can tie my shoe. I can learn to tie my shoe, maybe if they haven't done it yet. So I don't necessarily talk about the power of yet because I want them to think a little beyond that. I can do this. It might take me a little longer, but I can do it. I can get through this class period. I can go sit by myself at lunch if my friends aren't talking to me. And I can be okay with that. I can get through the day. I can go to my job. I can get in my room tonight and do some homework, even if my parents are fighting. I don't have to know what's going on in their life to help them have strategies that can lead to coping and self regulating. So, that power of positive self talk is huge. And the biggest thing you have to do in your classroom is when you hear that negative talk, redirect. We don't talk like that in here. If they say, oh, I'm so stupid. What was that? We don't call ourselves stupid because we're not stupid. Sure, I might have just made a dumb decision or did something dumb, said something dumb, but I am not dumb, and they need to own that. And you'll find that they'll correct you too. We do it without even thinking. And we talk to ourselves in our heads like 300 and some times a minute or something. It's like huge. It's a big amount. We're always like there's a conversation going on in your head the whole time. But you've got to focus on not saying negative things about yourself. That negativity is an awful spiral to get into. So teenagers can struggle with that, but so can adults. So I let them correct me too. Miss Steinbrink, we don't say that in here. You're right. No, we don't. I'm not dumb. We are our own worst critic. So model it, model making mistakes with it. Sometimes that's going to happen whether you meant it to or not, but model it and show students how to overcome that and not call yourself stupid, not tell yourself you can't do things. Let's look at it like I can do this. So we can get that power of positivity going for our students. All right. Positive self-talk at all levels. Wow, I made a busy one. So I'm going to see if I might just move it for a second and then move it right back. All right, so here's that modeling it aloud. Yes, I still do this. You can do this. I am enough. I can do this. I messed up, but I can do this. Number 2, explain why this works for students, right? You got to tell them the brain science that negativity will start to rewire your brain to only look for negatives. And so we have to build confidence up in ourselves that we know we can do this. We just need more practice, or we need to have more focus, or whatever the case may be. But they need to know they can do it. And then scaffold, to help students. We need to, that's why I love the list of I can statements to help them see what we're working on. I can learn from my mistakes. I can get better. I can make friends. I can be positive around my friends and say things out loud like, I can get this done tonight instead of I can't. I can get through this test. Another thing is if you're going to talk about survival, you can order or create a classroom set of affirmation cards. That's number 4 on here. I have a set that is teen friendly that I ordered off Amazon. You can Google it, affirmation cards. And if a kid is particularly struggling, I might hand them the deck and say, here, pick out a few of these that can motivate you, inspire you, that you feel that might be helpful. And then they can just take a minute or two over by my desk, flip through the cards, find one, say it to themselves. Nobody else has to know they're doing that. Sometimes the kids need that. You can have whole class ones in lower elementary where you guys talk about, oh, here's our affirmation for today. We are, and then have a list generated. They either you generate or the kids generate. I love to let students help generate positive things. And then we practice that positive self-talk in those safe, supported situations. So then when we really need it, our brain doesn't say, you're so dumb, you can't get through this, you're going to fail. Because our brains can say that to us and we let them. All right, so there is the little engine that could. And there's things you can put. This is just an example of affirmation cards for elementary. You can put them as posters, but that tends to, I find that if you just have like posters up all year, unless you're rotating them and keeping things fresh, it blends in the background and that can be lost, that opportunity can be lost. So I like to have little decks of cards where kids can look through them and be like, yes, I can learn new things. I'm not dumb. I can learn new things. I can love and accept myself. And when I make mistakes. Another way you can hang that up, see here's some more positive affirmations. Sometimes I just take these that I find on the internet and then I make some cards. You can just write them on an index card. It doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to buy things like I did. I just saw it on Amazon and went, ooh, I need that. And it has worked. These tough breakups in high school. I had a girl whose boyfriend videotaped them. Not sure exactly what they were doing, but he put it on Snapchat. And it was embarrassing and humiliating for her. And that led me to get those cards because she was struggling. Everybody knew. Of course, all the friends saw what they did. And those are some tough situations that kids have to deal with, and we don't always hear about them. I just happen to know about this. So it took her a while to accept and forgive herself and love herself. But those cards came in handy, and they won't work for every kid. But it's awful nice to have something available if they do need it. And here's some more poster type things. You can hang posters up again, but I don't know. Maybe you can have these digitally and maybe look at some and say, hey, which one of this fits you today? Are you grateful? And I can just tell you, gratitude practice will do more than anything. Having kids be grateful will help build those neural pathways on that positive side and not focusing on negatives so they can start seeing the good in things that they are grateful for. That is one of the most powerful things you can do is help them with a gratitude practice. And it does not have to take up hardly any of your class time. What's one thing you're thankful for today? Write it down on your piece of paper and then, go on with yours. Or an entrance ticket. Just something that takes a couple seconds. And that way they get in the habit of looking for it. All right, one of my favorites, deep breathing. Had a student, the Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs calls this arousal control. I don't call it that because I teach high school. And I'm not having that conversation or that classroom disruption. So I call it deep breathing. And what research will show is that we don't do it nearly enough. Psychology Today also had an article about this, and I have that linked at the end. And the doctor, the psychiatrist, I believe, who talked about it in that article, said that he called it it's like putting on the brakes for your brain and resetting it. So think about your computer's messing up. What does your tech department want you to do? Reboot it, turn it off, turn it back on. There's a reason they do that. It helps reset things. And deep breathing does that for us. So it can calm your nerves like nobody's business. Nature gave us that so that we do have a way to deal with stress. And that's what it is. It's that halt, that break on the stress. And then deep breathing can bring in that oxygen and cleansing. Some people get health complications because they don't do enough deep breathing. So there's some simple techniques, and I like to show the entire class once. I teach them how to do it. I explain why they need to do it, and I do it at the beginning. I have a Train Like a Navy SEAL boot camp, so we do these at the beginning of the year where I explain the science, and I talk to them about why we do it and that they can use it from then on their own, but we're going to do it together so that everybody understands how to do that. I have also, and sometimes I model it like So I have model it right there in the center. One time I was teaching and a student said, Miss Steinberg, you're getting awful, you're awful salty with us today, and I don't think we deserve that. Oh, I hadn't realized I was being salty. So I said, you know what? I need a deep breath. Who else needs to take a deep breath with me? And the whole class, oh, I need it. I'm stressed. High school kids are way more receptive to this than you think. So I'm like, okay, we're all going to stop and take a deep breath. So you can do it however you want, but you want them to count going in as they take the deep breath, count a couple seconds holding it, and then count down as they release. And you can pick whatever numbers you want. I like to do, I might have them do 4 slow, count to 4 slowly on your way in, hold it for 2, and then count 5 out. I've got some resources there. Here's one, the yoga pretzels. It's geared toward elementary, but I like these big cards because they give me all kinds of examples of deep breathing and different kinds of breaths. They have cute pictures and stuff for elementary, and if you need movement and stretching, they have that too. So that's good to have in your classroom. I got it on Amazon. 5-finger breathing is great for elementary because you can take your hand and you can breathe in as you go up the finger and breathe out as you go down the finger. And then breathe in as you go up the finger and then breathe out as you go down the finger. And you can model that in the classroom if you're teaching littles, and they can learn to control themselves. They start to get overwrought or anxious or hyper or wound up. Stop and let's take a deep breath. Or mad. This can help with kids that have those anger triggers. That let's learn how to breathe. I had a student with that TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and through deep breathing with me, learned how to self-regulate when that non-existent fuse, he didn't have a long cord on that fuse for his temper after that car wreck. He didn't have a fuse. He just went from fine to mad. So he learned that when he hit that anger, then he needed to take those deep breaths, and it started to have miracle results. So I can't talk enough about how awesome this is. So I'm not going to read these slides to you. You have my presentation, but that's going to walk you through how to do that with your students. The clenched fist method works great for middle school and high school because they can clench that fist under the table and nobody has to see them do it. So they clench it and then they breathe in. And they release finger and they breathe out, and then they breathe in and then they breathe out, and until they have done it 5 times with all they now have open. Plus that clenching and then releasing will also help them as well. And here again is the step-by-step that I provide for you. The next slide is going to be high school deep breathing. And again, it's 4 or 5 seconds in, hold for a couple seconds, and then 4 or 5 out. So they can gradually, as they need to, increase it. And they'll need to do it a couple times before that will take effect. And there's how it looks in high school. I want you to use this with students kind of low key. I train them all at first. So here's how we do it. Here's when we do it, and here's why we do it. Then sometimes you're going to see a kid that's really struggling. Might be anger, might be anxiety, whatever the issue is. But I will quietly walk over there and direct them to breathe. Nobody around has to know what I'm saying to them. They just see me talking to a student. And I make sure that their friends don't hear that because you don't want to have that added pressure on that kid. But I make sure that they're making eye contact, and I'll be like, breathe, slow, count. Make sure you do your counting. I want you to take some deep breaths. Make sure you're counting. And I'm looking up because most of them are taller than me. So make sure, and it can do wonders. You will be amazed. You will be amazed. I promise. It seems crazy, but I'm that crazy teacher. It makes them do stuff all the time. So they don't even question me. But if you start out and you take them through the boot camp, they'll know, oh yeah, the deep breathing. I know why I need to do that. Navy SEALs do it. Anybody can do it. Okay, we're going to wrap up. And I have a lot of resources for you. And I will talk about that live. But these links, so castle.org, where the all the competencies are for social emotional learning. Author Dan Tricarico, this is really for you, the teacher. The Zen Teacher is his book. He has a website. He's on Twitter. And his book, Sanctuaries, is one of my very favorites. for how to enjoy that moment, relax in that moment, and find that peace, even if your moment is like 5 minutes or 1 minute a day. The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, if you need to know about what trauma kids go through, that's a lot. I wouldn't read it by myself, though. That's a lot to handle. I would do a book study if you wanted, or a book club, or read it with a friend. Then here's a whole bunch. And then I have written a bunch of different articles for ISTE, Teacher Education Network, and on my blog about social emotional learning and some other strategies. 4 tips to help families and students get through those winter blues, and so forth. So you can go through these. I have also got the History Channel excerpts because I learned about the Navy SEAL emotional skills training from the History Channel's special they did called The Brain, and it was fascinating. So embedded in there were these, and I took out some of the clips because I bought that episode, so you can watch those clips. And then here's where you can buy those cards that I talked about. Look at Hattie's Visible Learning. And I have an SEL Wakelet collection. Wakelet is a curation tool on the internet that's free, and I have curated a whole bunch of resources for you. So you have all of that. I hope you have enjoyed my session. I have enjoyed presenting it here with you, and I know you might have a lot of questions. So if you're live, we can get to those. And if you are watching this recorded at a later date, then you can, again, reach me at Twitter at Steinbrink Laura, and I would be happy to walk through some more things with you or answer any questions you have. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and thanks for joining.
Thank you for joining this session. To request a certificate of attendance, you can access the link at the bottom of the session description, scan the QR code here, or go to bit.ly/I2 certificate. Bit.ly shorteners are case sensitive, so please be sure to use all uppercase letters. Hear what insight other I2 attendees and presenters might have on this session and other breakout sessions by connecting with the Innovation Institute community on Facebook or Twitter at I2 Estale or in Attendify's interactive features. And don't forget to mark your calendar for June 8th and 9th to join us for I2 2022. Thank you.